Hi you guys. So as you might know, I just recently passed my LMSW exam and I'm officially a licensed social worker. So I'm here to give you guys the do's and don'ts of how to pass your licensure exam. So take notes, make sure that you're tuned in, and I will say this, what applies to me may not apply to you. So just take this as a general suggestion, okay? Before I get into the do's and don'ts, I want to let y'all know what to expect from taking your master's level exam. So this exam is $230. You have to apply to your local state board first. So once you apply to your board and you get approved, then you'll be able to go through the ASWB and purchase your exam and schedule a time at your testing center. So in total, I probably paid a little over $300. I paid $75 to apply to my board in Alabama, and then I paid the $230 exam fee from the ASWB. So it's very expensive, but set aside some money, y'all. I mean, it's totally worth it. You know, I'm licensed, so it's totally worth it. So make sure you set aside some money. Just know it's an investment. The fee to your board depends on your state. So just be mindful of that. This test is 170 questions of content. Only 150 of those questions are scored. It's multiple choice. It's you get a 4-hour block to complete all of the questions. And since it's an electronic test, it keeps track of your time because you're not allowed to have a watch in the testing center. So it keeps track of your time. You can take breaks. Just be mindful when you take breaks, your time is still going. So I gave myself a 5-minute break halfway through the test around maybe question 85 or somewhere between 85 and 90. I took a break and I went to the bathroom, cleared my head, did my mantra, and then I came back and I finished the rest of the test. And that really helps me. And I finished the test with an hour left to spare, and I spent that last hour reviewing questions. So the test lets you flag questions as you go if you're unsure or you don't know the answer, so you can review them and come back. And that makes it a little bit easier so you don't have to flip through the whole test again. So you can go to your flagged questions, answer them. I will say do not change your answer unless you are totally sure that you had an epiphany moment and you're like, I read the question wrong. That's incorrect. Otherwise, do not second guess yourself on this exam. So also something to note, the amount you need to get correct depends on the difficulty level of your exam, and you're not going to know the difficulty level going into the exam. You won't find out until the end when I tell you how much you needed to pass. I know that's really scary. So if your test is easier, you're going to have more questions you need to get right. If your question is harder, you're going to have less questions that you need to get right. So I want to say the range of questions you need to get right varies between 93, 100 and so. It's somewhere in there. It's a little range that they give you of what the test might say. So basically you have to at least get 60-70% of the test correct, basically. So I needed 100 to pass my test and I got 122. So it depends on what kind of test you get. So just be mindful of that. Don't freak out. But I wanted to let y'all know what this test entails before y'all jump in. So let's do the do's and don'ts. So let's start with the don'ts. So do not, and I repeat, do not overstudy. I tell everybody, you know this stuff. Like, once you start off in social work, they tell you that it is a profession. This is a skilled profession. You know, so once you get that general overview that you get in undergrad, you know this stuff. Whether you've been out of school for 6 months, a year, however long, do not overstudy this stuff, because I promise you, I have been out of school for 6 months almost before I started studying, and it came back to me like this. Like, once I started reading, I was like, oh, I remember that. I just need to brush up on it. So do not overstudy. Do not buy material unless it's necessary. Do not do it. There are so many study programs. There's so many tutors. I will say your first go round, do not invest so much in those materials. I'm not going to tell you not to invest at all, because it just depends on your learning style. If you know I cannot sit here and read through study material, then yeah, go buy an audio or, you know, invest in someone that might help you learn how to answer the questions if you're not good at answering critical thinking type of questions. Yeah, do that. But I will say, initially, when you first start studying, learn yourself first before you invest money. 3, this is a big one. Number 3, do not compare yourselves to others. I was such a victim of this when I first started studying. I was hearing horror stories of people failing 5, 6 times, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna fail too. Oh my gosh, if I have to take the test more than one time. And you start psyching yourself out over something that hasn't even happened yet. That's not your story. Their story is their story. How they've done on the test, that's not your story, okay? So don't write your own story based off of other people. I will also say, don't compare yourself to people that have passed. You know, like, what they did is different from what works for you. And I've heard so many different people use so many different methods that I didn't use, and that started to make me nervous. Like, I'm like, oh, they passed with that, so maybe I need to buy that. You know, you get so caught up in that. So don't compare yourself. 4, when you are going through practice questions, do not pay so much attention to getting the questions right. I think a large part of me learning was me getting the questions wrong. And it took me a while to realize that, because I'm like, oh, I want to see if I got it right. So I'm flipping back and forth, and I'm not taking the test and actually learning how the test is structured. So I will say, really focus on how the test is laid out. Do all the questions. Like, give yourself a 4-hour block to do the whole test at least once, so you can kind of get a feel of how it's actually going to be. So I will say, yeah, do not go into this test thinking you have to get everything right, because you're not. There are some things that you are not going to know no matter how much you study. So last don't beat yourself up. Please don't beat yourself up. You know, it's okay to take breaks during this test. It's an overwhelming amount of material. So give yourself days off. Give yourself an hour a day if you don't feel like studying that hard today, you know? Like, just don't beat yourself up and feel like you have to be this super student. And because there's only so many hours in the day. Some people are working full time, people have families, so don't overwork yourself or beat yourself up if you're not studying all the time, 24/7. Okay, so let me give y'all the do's. So do make a plan. Please make a plan. If you know that you're working in 8 to 4:30 or 9 to 5, whatever you're working, you really have to plan out your day. So I will say, for people that do have full-time jobs and other responsibilities going on, I will say, during your downtime, yeah, you might want to rest, you might want to take a nap, you might want to play around on your phone, but take those little moments that you have free time and study. Listen to the material, watch YouTube videos, read through some notes, you know, like, use that downtime wisely. I'm not gonna say don't get rest, but if you have some downtime, use it. That little bit of downtime might make something start clicking in your head, you know, you might actually retain it better. I will say, if you're an auditory and a visual person, watch YouTube videos. I will tell you, like, a large, maybe 60% of my study process was due to me watching YouTube videos. So I'm going to drop some links to some people that really helped me. But just to name a few, I really was invested in watching 𝓛𝓲𝓷𝓷𝓮𝓬𝓽. He's really great at question breakdown, and he gives you a lot of sample questions, a lot of reassurance. It's such a great process. I promise you, I got most of his questions wrong, but I learned so much in the process of how to think critically and look at the situation for what it is in the question. So 𝓛𝓲𝓷𝓷𝓮𝓬𝓽, I watched Agents of Change. She has a lot of videos that are very informative, and these are more concept-based videos. So if you don't understand certain concepts like personality disorders or ethics or whatever it is, I was just looking at some of her videos. I also watched what is her name? It's something Magruder. I'm gonna drop her name though, so I can't think of her name right now. But yeah, so she has a good DSM and ethics video that I watched right before my test. So yeah, find you some resources on YouTube based off of the content that you might not understand. Because I'm very auditory and visual, so I have to see it and hear it. I can't just sit there and read for hours on end. So that really helps me. Number 3, print out your code of ethics. Print out your code of ethics. I printed out, I'm gonna show you guys. I printed out the code of ethics. It's very long, It's a lot of paper, but I promise you, ethics is a large majority of the test. So I printed out my code of ethics. I highlighted some of the important points under each one, so I can remember, okay, if I'm working with a particular client, I know what I'm gonna have to do in that situation based off the question. Take notes and make flashcards. Now, if you're not a flashcard person, I understand. I am not good at continuously looking at flashcards, but I think writing down the information more than once really helps me. So I had a notebook that I bought just to keep like all of my like notes in that I took. I also did flashcards because, I mean, this is a huge stack of flashcards, y'all, so I had a lot of free time. But I did this so because I know me, I'm very repetitive, and I know if I write down things more than once, it's really gonna stick for me. So a lot of times I really didn't even have to review my notes too much, because it's like, okay, if I think about Erickson's theory of social development, I can go through the stages without even having to look, you know? So I would, you know, recommend writing things down. Also too, I recommend getting this study book, the 𝓛𝓲𝓷𝓷𝓮𝓬𝓽 book. It's very, very helpful. It's a very good, test I can't talk. It's a very good, like, cumulative, I guess, explanation of all the things that you would need to know. So it has like research, assessment, intervention. It has all the social theories and systems, and everything you need to know is basically in this book. You might have to go more in depth and find other resources, but this book probably costs, I bought it for like $40. It's usually in that $40 to $60 range. But this is a small investment, so I will say definitely look into getting this book. Also, a small part of the exam is knowing your DSM. So there are questions about diagnosis. There are questions about medications. So you have to be prepared for that. So definitely buy a copy of DSM. Even if you don't buy it just for the exam, you're a social worker. You need this book anyway. So buy yourself a DSM. My last and final points: be easy on yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself, like I said before on my don'ts. But do be easy on yourself. What really helps me before the test is really doing meditations. I've never been a meditating type of person before, but I listen to like these anxiety relief meditations at night while I go to sleep, and it really helps ease my mind a little bit more, because I'm the type of person, I'm a terrible test taker, and I second guess myself and I stress myself out. So I could not sleep like a week before the test, and I was like, I can't keep going on like this. Like, I can't stay up all night the day before the test. So I started listening to these meditations. I came up with this mantra for myself so I wouldn't freak out. So my mantra was, I am loved, I am capable, and I am successful. And I kept repeating that to myself before the test, during the test, because you do start to stress out. You do start to freak out. So I had a mantra. And also prayer. If you pray, definitely pray your way through this exam. I think the largest part, honestly, is your mental. Like, this is such a mentally exhausting exam. You have to be in the right headspace. You have to believe in your capabilities as a social work practitioner, and you have to just trust your knowledge. And I think it's so hard to do that because you want to make the best decision. But these questions are so general. You're not looking at that client in their face. So you can't, go too deep into the question. You have to look at the question for exactly what it is and go with your best judgment, So it's very about grounding yourself, like making sure, like, I know that I am a great social worker. I know this stuff. I'm capable of making these decisions for my clients' well-being, and I'm great, So I think it's a good idea to find things that will calm you and keep you grounded during this experience, because you will have your days. And also take breaks. Like I said before, I did not study every single day, and mind you, I was only working part-time, so my schedule wasn't as hectic, so I did have a lot of free time. But I think I was stressing myself out because I was like, you have so much free time, you should be studying. But no, you don't have to overwhelm yourself with studying like that. You're allowed to take breaks. You're human. Take a break. So yeah, I will link all of the study materials that I use down below. If you need any additional practice or anything that I haven't talked about in this video, let me know, and I'm happy to email some things to people. Y'all, this is such a crazy journey, and I never thought I would be sitting here saying that I actually passed and I'm a licensed professional. That's really so crazy to me. And I don't take that lightly. So in any way that I could possibly help, let me know. And yeah, thanks you guys.